Right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Legal Design Thinking for Future Ready Firms with the lovely Melissa Lyon.
Hi everyone.
My name is Irina. I'm the marketing manager at Practice Evolve, and I'm very excited to introduce to you all Mel, who is the executive director and experienced designer at Hive Legal. Mel, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I would normally do a little bit more of an in-depth introduction into your background, but I think you will do that much better than I in just a few moments. So what I will say instead is that having attended Mel's workshop earlier in the week on legal design thinking, I'm very much looking forward to her session today and just going a little bit more detail into the concept of legal design thinking, into the process of implementing it, and how law firms can utilize that within their own practice. Before we dive in, just a couple of quick housekeeping rules. So there will be a Q&A session at the end. If you do have any questions for Mel, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens to submit those, and I will make sure that Mel answers all those questions before we log off. We also have had quite a few really good questions come through during the registration process, so I'm looking forward to that part of the presentations very much. There will be a short feedback poll at the end, so please do take the time before you log off to complete your feedback. And lastly, this session is being recorded, so you can revisit the content at any time. What I will do is send out the link in an email to everyone that's registered, probably in the next few days, so you will have access to that next week. Before I pass on the spotlight to Mel, for those of you who are new here, just very quickly, we started the Intel series of Practice Evolve a few months ago to great success, and we're using this as a platform to host and deliver meaningful and interesting content for legal professionals that are both within and outside of our PE community. And we always aim to host subject matter experts such as Mel, who talk about really interesting and innovative topics. And we hope that all of our attendees at the end of each session can walk away having learned something or having adopted some tools to become just a little bit more innovative or more strategic or like more competitive within their legal practice. So now let's move forward with the program. I will pass on the controls to Mel, because let's be honest, you all came here to hear her speak and not myself. So Mel, over to you. I will quickly mute myself and then over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Irina. I'll just make sure that I can there we go. Thank you, Irina, and thank you for attending my session earlier this week where we talked a lot about purpose, and it was fantastic to meet Irina in Sydney recently. And thank you to Practice Evolve for having me here today to speak about something that I am absolutely passionate about and have seen work so well in a number of contexts over the last, I'm going to say, 8 to 10 years. So let's get started. A bit about me to start off with so that you can understand where I'm coming from. I am a law firm owner. I am not a practicing lawyer, hence the title executive director. But probably what you're more interested in hearing about is the fact that I am an experienced designer. And what that means is that I very much look at the experiences that we want to create at the firm that I work in for our clients and for our team as well. So really looking at how we can use certain frameworks, which I'll talk more about today, to really hone in on what the people within your organisation and the people who are in who work with your clients need to really produce successful outcomes and results for them. I like to call myself an innovator. I think my idea of what innovation is it's often to think differently and to bring about change and to have people future ready, to make the most of the opportunities that there are when you do think differently. And I think that really fits well with the fact that a lot of, apart from being a practicing lawyer for a number of years in the commercial litigation space, I was also a business developer at firms as well. So I think that whole idea of thinking differently, focusing on the people that you're designing for, really lends itself to the business development side of it, and achieving great results for your firm as a business as well. You'll hear me say it a number of times through this presentation. My personal purpose is to, I suppose, inspire people to think differently, to improve, so that they can improve the experience for the people that you work with within the legal ecosystem, and the people that are served by the legal ecosystem. So the people that you work with within your teams and within your firms, and also the clients. So that's me. Let me tell you now a bit about Hive Legal, which is the firm that I work with. We were one of the first new law firms in Australia, and we started up in 2014. What does new law mean? A lot of different things, I think, to a lot of different people. And when we first started using that title, I think there was a lot of confusion about what new law meant. Was it that you were tech driven? Was it that you were virtual? I think really what new law meant, and maybe continues to mean, is that you're really not a traditional business model, business firm, and that's very much what Hive was and continues to be. So our business model is different from the point of view that we have never had timesheets. Our lawyers do not have individual budgets to meet. We value price, and I know that John Chisholm gave an amazing session a few weeks ago with Practice Evolve, talking about that approach as well. So value pricing, no timesheets. Also, we have always worked in a hybrid way. So right from the start, our team has had the choice of where and to a certain extent when they work. We have offices in the CBD in Melbourne, but our team can choose where they want to work. We've got people in other states, and we have people in regional areas as well. So people have the choice, and it's not so much about being 100% virtual or being 100% in the office. It is very much about giving people the choice about where they can work most effectively and achieve what we like to refer to as work-life integration, as opposed to work-life balance. We also use technology as much as we can to improve the experience for our team and our clients. And so we've really embraced that right from the start, developing a number of tech platforms and using tech as some of the solutions for things that we have designed using design thinking. The reason I've got someone here dancing on the moon, possibly Mars, didn't know whether or not it was actually Mars, but is that when we first started talking about our business model back in 2014, and I was at a conference, I had someone come up to me afterwards and say, Melissa, that was absolutely fascinating, and I can see where you're going with this, but you may as well have told us that we could all dance on Mars, because this is not a law firm model that's necessarily going to work. It has, and to be honest, when I heard that, it was a sharp intake of breath, and wow, we're doing something really experimental here. Is it going to continue to work? It has, and I think design thinking has, and our approach on all of those aspects of the business model that I spoke about before, and especially design thinking, has helped us along the way as we've gone. Once again, our purpose is that we're purpose-driven to improve the experience for our clients and our team, and that underpins everything that we do, and you'll see how that rolls out in terms of design thinking as I go through that. We also value innovative thinking. We value that different way of thinking as we do things. So has it worked? Yes, it has. We've turned 10. Yay, happy birthday to us. We turned 10 earlier this year, and it has been 10 years of consolidating, but also experimenting and iterating around those different elements of the business model that I talked about before. And most of the time, we have used design thinking mindsets and processes to develop the processes, the programs that we needed to really continue to improve the essential aspects of those business models. So our hybrid working, our pricing approach, the way that we work with our clients. Through that journey, we've actually embraced design thinking, but we've also had the opportunity to make design thinking our own, and we've developed our own design thinking based framework. It's powered by purpose. So Hive Think P, the power of purpose, is what we use to develop our processes, our services, our experiences, and our business model. We also use that for our future strategic direction as well. And I will explain how that's been used with some case uses after I've gone through a few other things today. So as I said before, my purpose with today's session is to give you some inspiration on how you can use design thinking to future-proof your firm. What I will say about this is your firm is not Hive. It will be a different sort of firm, and any design processes that you use, I encourage you to make sure that they're anchored in your purpose and what you're trying to achieve. That's where the secret sauce here is. Create your own unique path in terms of what you're going to do with your firm. And design thinking can help you achieve that purpose and develop the programs and the processes that you want to put in place to really get to where you need to be. The reason why I would say design thinking is something that you should seriously consider and take up, there are so many reasons why, but these will hopefully give you the business side of why you would use design thinking. It improves the experience for those that you're designing for, or those who are part of your firm and served by your firm. So you see here, I've got a whole lot of X type sayings. First of all, users generally, so the users of your firm, you're going to be focusing on them. You're going to be focusing on your customers and your clients. You're going to be focusing on your employees, and you're going to be focusing on your teams. So it provides you with a whole lot of different ways to look at how you can actually improve that experience. I often say, if you have a happy team, you have happy clients, and if you have a happy clients, you have a happy team. You could also say that of your service providers, the other organisations and your network that you might work for as well. Trying to really focus on improving those experiences is absolutely central to what we're talking about when we talk about design thinking. It gives you sustainable results too, because what it enables you to do is to really design those processes in your business models around what people's needs and wants and desires are. People are critical to design thinking. It is human-centered design that we're actually talking about. So we all know that if people are actually buying into the solutions and the way and the things that you're designing, then they're more likely to use them, they're more likely to have input, and they're more likely to really help you develop those things. So the results do become sustainable because you are including the people in the design of the outcomes. You also create solutions that are data-driven as well. And when I'm talking about data here, I'm not just talking about quantitative data, I'm talking about qualitative data as well. Because when you're starting your project and you're using design thinking, you're gathering a lot of information to see what you need to create those solutions, those programs, processes, even documentation if you want to use design thinking to produce documentation. So you're really given that opportunity to gather that data in a really meaningful way from the people who are eventually going to be integral to those processes or systems or business models. It also provides the basis for metrics as well. Often when I'm doing design sprints with clients around developing these types of things and designing these types of things, we talk about what successful will look like. And we talk about that as we're going through the process. So obviously, if you've already decided on your purpose, you can success will look like fulfilling that purpose, but you can also break it down. And if you know what success you want success to look like, you can set your basis for your metrics right from the start of that project as well. You can revisit it as you're going through your project, but it really gives you that really nice foundation for how you're going to measure the success of the project that you're rolling out. It also provides really holistic solutions as well. And the reason it provides holistic solutions is because you are, you're not jumping to a solution, you're focusing on the problem. And by focusing on the problem, it enables you to think more broadly about how you can solve that problem for the users. It means that you can pull in the different skills that you need, and we'll talk about that a bit more in the mindsets that you need, but it means that you're actually looking at the problem and you're not jumping to a solution, and there may well be different parts of that problem that you need to solve as well. I'm also going to say it, often our problems aren't necessarily legally based problems or problems that are solely problems within the legal ecosystem context or profession context. They are much broader than that, and design thinking enables you to think in that much more holistic way in terms of how you come to those solutions. And of course, I'm going to say this, better outcomes for all, especially when you get to co-design with others, or co-design even with other people. So co-designing with your clients, co-designing with your team. It also provides better outcomes because the way that design thinking process works, you create something and then you don't, it's not just there, set and forget, off we go, that's it, it's done and dusted. You have that beautiful ability to iterate it, change it, tweak it, continue to make it work for you and the people that you're providing the services or for. And so it's not just a set outcome at the end, it's they're outcomes that can change along the way and be continually improved. So it really does lend itself to that idea of continuous improvement. Okay, enough about the why. Hopefully I've convinced you now that that's exactly what you need to be thinking about. So with that context, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to explain to you what legal thinking is. I'm going to do it in a pretty fast way, and very happy for questions at the end, and also to talk afterwards if you want to know more about these things as I go through them. I'm also going to talk about the mindsets that you need to use design thinking, and those mindsets are not necessarily mindsets that come easily to our people who have legally trained minds, or people who have worked in the legal ecosystem, because I think we've been trained, and also within the environments that we've been in, we work in a way that doesn't necessarily sit well with these types of mindsets. So that you may find some of these mindsets a bit challenging. Go with it and trust the process. Speaking of the process, we'll also talk about the process, and then I'm going to give you some very practical examples of how we've used design thinking at Hive Legal. Okay, so design thinking. There is something that is much broader than legal design thinking. Design thinking has been around for a very long time, and it's been used in different contexts to design processes and systems for in many other ways. So IDEO, I love this definition. It brings that whole idea of it being human-centered. Design thinking has a human-centered core. It encourages organisations to focus on the people they're creating for, which leads to better products, services, and internal processes. So design thinking is that very broad way of looking at it, but as all things legal, we like to put legal in front of things. And so there has also developed in the last, probably I'll say 6 or 7 years, this concept of legal design thinking. grabbed a definition here from Astrid Kohlmeyer and Mira Klamola. They've written a book called The Legal Design Book, and I'll give you some details about that later on, which includes some of the practical examples that we've used at Hive as well. It's a fantastic practical book. Their definition of legal design thinking is that it's design deployed in the field of law to transform legal products, services, work systems, business strategies, ecosystems, and user experience. Margaret Hagan, who is at the Stanford Legal Design Lab, she talks about legal design being the ability to put a different pair of glasses on and see things differently, which I think is a really good way of looking at it as well. It actually makes you stop and think about how you can look at things differently in terms of what you're doing. So basically, design thinking is legal design thinking is putting design thinking in a legal context. So mindsets, absolutely crucial to being able to use design thinking well. My view is that the mindsets you need to be future fit and fit to use design thinking in the way that it should be used. You need to be willing to actually find your purpose as an individual or as a firm, especially as a firm in a way, and for the reasons I'll explain later. Irina and I were having this conversation just before because she was included in, she did attend the session that I did on purpose. It can be a bit confronting sometimes to actually pull yourself out of the day-to-day and really reflect on what your purpose is. And it doesn't come easily to some people, but I can say from experience that once you take the time and the space and give yourself permission, either as an individual or as a firm, to really understand what your purpose is, it provides you with an amazing foundation to build the things that we're going to talk about a bit later on. It means that everything that you do is underpinned by that purpose, and it gives you almost like, as I said, an anchor, not in a negative sense that it drags you down, but an anchor to actually always come back to understand why you're doing what you do. So I really encourage people to think that way as well. Empathy, absolutely central to the idea of human design, because we need to understand what our users need when we're designing these processes and products. Collaboration as well, and we'll talk a bit about that, bringing together the skills that you need to do that. Experimentation, very important. Giving things a go, not waiting for them to be perfect. And creativity as well. That idea of being creative and not just doing things that have always been done in a precedent-driven environment that we're often in the legal industry, legal ecosystem. It can be hard to be creative sometimes, but I've got some tips and tricks around how you can do that and why you should do it. What I love about this is that I was reading this article that was in Harvard Business Review around leaders who embrace change, and it was a beautiful synergy to see that all of those mindsets that I've just talked about and that I have put in brackets after these things were also aligned. So obviously, if we're going to be future ready as a firm, we need to lead our firm into that, and we need to embrace change. So these are the 5 behaviours that Edith identified when she was talking about how you can embrace change. Share a compelling and clear purpose, obviously that mindset that I was talking about before. Ask what's not working. There's your empathy piece. Looking for boundary-spanning relationships. That's your collaboration piece. Looking for who you can partner with. Drawing together those teams that you need to design your firm or the processes that you're designing. Promote calculated risk-taking. There's your experimentation piece. And looking ahead and seeing opportunity. You know, connecting those dots where they don't seemingly connect has always been something that's motivated me. So really, really pulling together different things that at first might not seem like they're going to make a difference, but they do. thinking creatively from that perspective. So beautiful synergies between those mindsets and what you need to embrace to be a change leader. So empathy, once again, quoting IDEO, the home of design thinking, empathy is at the heart of design, and without the understanding of what others see, feel, and experience, design is a pointless task. So we have to go beyond, assuming what people need. We have to really understand what they are seeing, what they're feeling in terms of how they work, or the process that they're in the middle of it. What is their experience? And stand, really get in there and ask those questions. And I'll give you some tips around how we do that as well. What we often do is we get starry-eyed and think, wow, I'm going to develop something absolutely amazing. I'm going to build this rocket. It's going to have all of these amazing attributes. I'm going to spend a lot of money doing it, and no one's going to have anything like this. And sometimes there are firms like that, and sometimes there are processes or products that we might design that way. Reality sets in, and what we eventually have to settle for is not all of those attributes and not all of the shiny toys that we wanted to have it. But the third slide is where the kicker is here. What have we actually asked the user what they needed? Have we actually asked them what their pain points were? Have we actually asked them what experience they wanted to have? And as you can see here, if we'd have done that at the start of this, we just would have been able to provide them with a bike and a ramp rather than a very expensive item that we weren't even able to produce anyway. So what design thinking does is it actually puts that third slide right at the start. What do our users actually need? And allows us then to roll out a process which gives us an end result that reflects the user's needs and provides us with a good experience along the way as we develop that. So collaboration is also a mindset that we need. Kat Moon, also a legal designer based at Vanderbilt Law School. I love this. She says, through multidisciplinary collaboration, we combine our separate superpowers, love us good superpower, to create a whole that is so much greater than the sum of its parts. So that whole idea that we can actually pull together multidisciplinary teams, as I don't think, I think we're getting better at it, but I don't think the legal ecosystem has been very good at drawing on the skills that are available to it as well as we could. I love the fact that that is moving. We tend to work in silos. We tend to think about things as legal problems rather than more broadly in terms of those types of problems. And so what design thinking does is it gives equal value to those skills which are going to give us better outcomes, and it encourages multidisciplinary teams where we can bring those people and those skills together to create a solution, a more holistic solution, which is what I was mentioning before. Experimentation, I'm going to say it again, legal ecosystem, often risk averse, and I absolutely get that because it's a serious business that we're in. But if we're going to change, we need to embrace ambiguity and experimentation and have some tolerance for failure because we need to actually test things out and see if they're going to work. I think Hive is a good example of that. It was an experimental business model at the time that we rolled it out, and we've iterated it along the way. And it shows that, you know, if you're prepared to take those risks and continue to iterate as you go, then you can gain success out of it. Creativity. I had the great pleasure of being involved in a session with Dr. Stuart Brown, who's a psychiatrist from the US as well, and he talked about play in a corporate context. So basically using play to spark new ideas. We often think, once again, because we're within a serious industry, that we've got to take everything seriously. But when you look at kids and you look at how they play and how they come up with the most amazing ideas, imagining how things can be, if we actually give ourselves permission to be more creative, we have the opportunity to think of those new ideas as well, and we can always mold them to work within the confines that we might have. But if we prevent ourselves from thinking creatively, we may never come up with those solutions that we eventually come up with. Right, I'm going to jump into the process now so you can see. So we talked about those different mindsets: purpose, empathy, collaboration, experimentation, and creativity. I know in the legal industry as well, we always like a good process. So design thinking is not just talking about mindsets, it's very much about a process as well. You may see different depictions of how legal design works. I like this double diamond approach because it actually shows you how you can use divergent and convergent thinking. So divergent thinking meaning when you're really going very broad, you're picking up a whole lot of ideas, your information gathering, and then the convergent thinking being more around how you distill those ideas, how you come up with your solutions. So we're going to work through this process and I'll give you some examples. So first of all, we talked about empathy. This is actually empathizing. So how do you go about empathizing? What you do is you understand who the stakeholders are, who are you designing for, who is involved in the project, and often the problem. And this is so that you can understand the problem that you're trying to solve. Ways that you can go about that is, age-old way of doing it often is interviewing. But if you put another lens on that and call it empathy interviewing, it has a whole new idea behind it. So what you're doing is you're really trying to understand from people who are maybe involved in a process or who work for your firm or who you're providing services to, what is it that they need? What is the experience that they want? What are they finding challenging in the situation that they're now in? From a client perspective, that might be, you know, how they're receiving the advice that they're receiving, that they're getting from you, or you know, within the firm, billing processes. You know, how is your team feeling about billing at the end of every month? So really interview the people that are involved in that, and interview it in a way so you can actually feel what it is to be like, to be them in that, and give them that space to be able to do that. You can always survey people as well. Tends not to be so personal, but I absolutely understand in a situation where you've got a lot of people involved that's the way you can do it. That's the good way of doing it. Very underrated is observing people, watching how people react in a situation. You know, when you give someone a document or when they're involved in a process, you know, is there an eye roll? Is there a sharp intake of breath? Are they not using the processes or systems that you have? Are they avoiding them? Are they, you know, actively trying not to use them? So observation is a really good way of gathering that information. So once you've gathered all of that information, the next stage is defining it, and defining it in a way so that you can use that information to come up with the point of view. So what's the problem here? Is the problem that there are too many people involved in the process? If we take a process, for example, is the problem that there's a bottleneck somewhere? Is the problem that clients aren't receiving the advice in a way that's working for them? And come to that point of view around it, so you know what the problem is. I always like to think about this stage as being loving the problem. Really love it to the extent that you want to understand it and pull it apart enough so that you're right in the middle of it. Often used term of you've got to be part of the problem to solve the problem. Design thinking provides you with the opportunity to do that because you've got people who are part of the problem designing the solution for it. Then within this phase, there is the challenge of reframing it to how might we. So you know what the problem is? The problem is that the documentation's too long. How might we reduce the size of this documentation so that people have a good experience of reading it? How might we provide a flexible workplace for our team so that they are able to achieve work-life integration? How are we able to provide price certainty to our clients so that they know exactly what they're going to be spending and they can put that into their budgets? So you reframe it so it's a challenge for those that are designing. But it really is, once again, that idea of the convergent thinking. So you're bringing that information down to make it able to be used. Then the fun part, and this is where the creativity comes. This is Hive team actually brainstorming the way that we were going to create our pricing process, because we don't have timesheets. We had to actually design our own pricing process, and this is them on the ground, absolutely coming up with a great way of doing that, which I'll speak a bit more about later on. So the way that you can ideate, it's brainstorming. It's coming up with really creative ideas, and you can do that by having sprints, brainstorms, having fun, using analogies, getting a group of people together. They have permission to come up with crazy ideas, draw examples from other industries, and it enables you to really do that very divergent thinking and come up with ideas that you're not going to think of if you're sitting in front of your screen in your office by yourself. You're going to be able to build on the ideas of others and really come up with some creative ideas. The final part of it, then, or two parts of this, is to prototype. So you come up with some great ideas, prototype them, and don't make them perfect. You know, coming back to that slide we had before about the amazing rocket ship, don't need to do that. Prototype it. Quick and dirty to start off with. Probably not something that legal lawyers would like to hear us say, but quick and dirty. You know, build a minimum viable product, something that you can test. Be visual and creative in the way that you're doing that too. You saw the picture before, the photo before of our team. We had post-its all over the place. We had drawings. We had, you know, journey maps of how this all looks like. So once you start to physically look at what this is going to look like, you can continue to build on those ideas and build to think. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's your way of starting something. And then once you've got that prototype, the experimental stage, which it is, test it and test it. Throw it out there. Have your safe test group. Could be, you know, safe test group of clients who you have a great relationship with that you can test it with. Test it within your team, but then definitely be ready to iterate it, because you've gone out there with a prototype. This isn't the finished product. Be ready to tweak it, be ready to change it. This next slide might be a bit scary for you, but what I'm going to say too is that the double diamond approach looks like an amazing process where it just goes, you go from this stage to this stage to this stage to this stage. If you're doing design thinking properly, it won't always look like that. In fact, I don't think it ever looks like that. It will look more like a messy mess, because what happens is often you get to a certain stage and you might get to defining the problem and you realize you don't have all of the information that you need. You need to go back and get more information from your users. You might get to the create stage and create a prototype, and then you test it and it's just not working at all. You need to go back and ideate again, or you need to go back and prototype it again. So what this process often looks like, and I've seen it happen so many times, more like a bowl of spaghetti than a beautiful, you know, this is what we do now, now, and now. And you have to be ready for that ambiguity, and you have to be ready for that slightly messy way of getting to the end solution. Okay, so how can you use design thinking? What can you focus on within your firm? Wow, it can be anything really, but what I would say from the start is, what's your purpose? Focus. That's the way that you can prioritize how you want to use design thinking best within your firm. Here are some examples of how you can use it. You can use it to create an better employee experience, better client experience. You can use it to develop products or services. You could use it for processes like pricing, and you can use it for how you're actually going to use technology. And I'm going to say it because everyone's talking about it. How are you going to use generative AI within your business? Design thinking is a great way of doing that. What I would say, though, is don't start with how do I use AI. Start with the problem, and then AI can be your enabler to create a solution to that problem. What I want to do now is talk to you about how, let's give you some really practical examples of how we've used design thinking at Hive. So employee experience for us, because we don't have timesheets, and because of the way that we work, a traditional performance review process just didn't work for us for a number of reasons. We couldn't just default to budgets to start off with. What's that person brought in? We have a focus on strengths-based skills, and we also have a focus in terms of not just legal skills, but other contributions and values and skills that we want our lawyers to bring to, or our lawyers and our team to bring to Hive. So we use design thinking to develop what we call a career growth program called Thrive at Hive. And what we did with that is we got together a team of people who opted in, who wanted to actually work with everyone to design that program. And that was representative of people right across the firm with different skills and different experience levels. And we went through the design thinking process by gathering the information from the entire team at Hive. Actually, I should say our size. We've now got 45 of us at Hive. And we went through and we developed, we went through what mattered to our team, what mattered to Hive as an organisation. We developed the program to take into account what people wanted, what Hive needed in terms of skills, how we could provide our team with the best opportunity to play to their strengths, and then how we could develop their careers in that way. So looking at, how we meet with them, how we provide feedback to them, how we provide them with a journey map for their individual careers. And so the end result has been Thrive at Hive, which a program which we continue to iterate. We've been doing it for 3 years now, and it continues to change, and we build on that once again using those ideas of iterating and improving the program as we go. In terms of success, I'd like to think we have a happy team at Hive. And I think, and we were recognised as Employer of Choice at the Australian Law Awards the year before last. So it's really great to have these different sorts of programs recognised from that perspective. Client experience. In fact, I've just got off the meeting that we have around this. We have a project, and you'll get the theme from this. We always like to put Hive in anything that we do at Hive Way. So our Hive Way program is around looking at how we can improve the experience for our clients. We use design thinking to reimagine how we communicate with our clients, and we got a lot of feedback from our clients around how they wanted to receive our advice, what the pain points often were for them. Some of those things would, in terms of how we presented the advice to them, what they preferred, what worked best for them. We worked through the design thinking process, but not only did we look at what our clients needed, we also looked at what our team needed to develop those great results as well, what support they needed to pull together the advice in a way that was going to work for our clients. The end result of that was that there are many aspects of it, including the visual ID part of how we present our advice, but also we've developed templates, email templates for how we provide our advice to clients, which provides us with consistency and also helps our lawyers to be able to do things more efficiently as well. And we continue to look at how we can improve that client experience. In terms of products and services, pretty early on at Hive, we really wanted to understand what our clients needed in terms of how we delivered the services to them. We went out to our clients, we asked them about that. As a result of that, we designed Hive GC Plus, which is a way that we work with our clients to provide them with a seamless service delivery around often their business as usual needs, but there are project needs as well, where we have someone working closely with the client and they have access to the rest of our team. So we've really turned the idea of a secondment on its head, and we've continued to iterate that product over the years, and we have many of our clients now working in that way. It's also been assisted by the fact that we don't have the billable hour, and so we are able to value price those products and services or that service as well. In terms of pricing, as I said, we had to develop our own pricing processes, this is an example of how we've used technology as well. So we have a pricing council, and our pricing council considers the pricing that's put together by the team, and we wanted an easy and efficient way of being able to capture the data that we have through our pricing process, and also to allow it to be a really streamlined process for those who were considering the pricing proposals that were being put in front of them. So we developed, excuse the joke here, but Value, being the sheep, who helps us with doing that. It's a chatbot. So when we're doing a pricing proposal, all of the information is put into the chatbot and then produced in a format that goes to our pricing council in a very consistent manner, but also enables us to gather that information. So this is a good example, I think, of how design thinking can help you to gather data, and also to allow you to have the basis for the metrics that you want to use to see if something's working. The other purpose of Value when we created her was to actually help educate our team as well in terms of how they go about doing their pricing. So throughout the chatbot, there are lots of tips and tricks and different materials that our team can use to make sure that they're doing the value pricing properly. Use of technology too. So another way that we have thought outside the square a bit more is to one of the pain points that we had was we are getting people wanting to join us as employees, and they apply, and often that's a scattergun approach in terms of CVs and applications being sent to different people in the firm, and different levels of information being provided. So we created another chatbot called Hive Scout. So all of our applications come through Hive Scout. It gives us consistent information. It's really streamlined. We know where those applications need to go once we get them, and we've actually grabbed the information that we need each time. So from an efficiency point of view, really good. Also designing for the future as well. So, you know, that whole idea too of being creative and thinking about opportunities. So, you know, it's such a great way of using those different mindsets that I talked about to actually be able to design the future of your firm, to use this way of, you know, your challenge might be how might we create a firm of the future? You know, what programs do we need? What do we need to put in place? What skills do we need? And you can use that design thinking process to, I would say, design the future of your firm as well. Okay. Before I ask Irina if she's got questions for me, I just wanted to say, if you want to know more, as you can tell, I can talk underwater about legal design. So I'm more than happy to talk to people if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or get in touch. As I said to you before, the legal design book by Astrid Kohlmeyer and Mira Klamola is fantastic. It also includes really practical examples too, and some of those examples that I've talked to you about today are in that book. I am also part of the Centre for Legal Innovation, and there is an amazing amount of information on design thinking, including a video series on their website. And so please have a look there. Also, if you want to be part of a community, then I host a legal design thinking collab. The next one is actually on the 4th of June. Keep an eye on my LinkedIn for some details around that. And we are actually talking about building business models and how we can use legal design thinking to do that. So please contact me if you'd like to be involved in that. And finally, as Irina said, I consult in this area. I work with a number of firms and organisations to help them use design thinking to facilitate that process to build all of those different things that they might want to build, and some of those examples there. So very happy to talk to anyone who's interested in needing help to use this way of thinking within your firm. Thanks, Irina.
Thank you, Mel. So I just had to get the control back of the mouse and unmute myself. Thank you so much for that. I think you may have actually answered quite a few of the questions that we did have for you, but we do have time for 2 or 3 more. I think we just got under 10 minutes. Bear with me. So, okay, one question here. This is a very different way for the legal ecosystem to think. Have you seen examples of individuals or firms who were initially skeptical about legal design thinking, but have since changed their perspectives after seeing the process in action?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is part of the fulfilling part of doing it, I think. When you first start to talk about these higher level mindsets and the way that you're going to approach things, I often get people staring at me saying, "You're not going to make me do these things, are you?" You know, and I can't. You know, I've got the solution; it's in my head. I've often and people are so willing to jump to that solution, and what I often say is just please trust the process because it can work. And I have seen over time it be the life of a project or even during a sprint, it's almost like suddenly people understand. They don't know where we're getting to start off with, but suddenly it clicks with them, especially when you get to that brainstorming stage where people all of a sudden go, I understand this now. I understand why we're looking at it more broadly. So I think it is really, as I said before, that idea of really understanding that it is a process and it all builds to where you need to get it to, and to trust that process. And often, I think understanding that there is benefit in really loving the problem is somewhere that I've seen many people in the legal industry go, oh, okay, I understand now. I understand how this is affecting other people, and I understand how we can come to a much better process or solution in the way that we do things.
Thank you, Mel. We have a question that's just come in from someone anonymous. How would you implement design thinking principles in the development of practice management software for law firms? Additionally, what features beyond AI are you noticing that both lawyers and clients are increasingly seeking in such software?
Look, I'm always one for thinking that you shouldn't stick to necessarily one framework to develop a project. So it's probably reflected in the way that Hive Think has evolved. And so Hive Think also includes I suppose, aspects of Agile and Scrum and all of those different types of things as well. So what I would say in that situation is, I think if when you're implementing these types of projects, going back to that first part thing that I talked about, looking at the purpose of the project and understanding how your best, what the best process is for you to do that. One of the things that I think is most important in especially a project like that is actually understanding the user experience from the start and how you do that. And maybe that is approaching that differently to just surveys. Maybe it is around the observation piece as well, being immersed in an organisation where you can see how people are using those types of platforms.
What metrics should we use to measure the effectiveness of legal design thinking, specific impact on our operations and client satisfaction?
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many different metrics that you can have. I think, so obviously you can have saving time is one thing. I mean, we're all time poor, so saving time in the way that something's done. If it's a client metric that you're looking for, repeat instructions, feedback that you're getting from the clients. So, you know, if at the start of this you want to get referrals from your clients, or you want them to have a better experience, understanding the questions that you're going to ask them afterwards as well, so that feedback loop and getting those different questions. I'd like to say money saved too, in terms of any project that you want. But for me, the way that I come at it, often it's mostly about improving the experience. So the qualitative feedback is really important. And I think once you get that qualitative feedback, the commercial and business side of it will flow, the profits will flow. So if you're, I suppose what I often say is your purpose should not be just to make profits. Your purpose should be more based in improving the experience and creating great outcomes for your clients and your team, and then the profit will follow from that.
Well, thank you so much. I think just taking note of time, that's probably all the time for questions that we do have. Thank you everyone for joining us today and hearing Mel speak. As Mel mentioned, plenty of avenues to reach out to her and find out more. It's definitely a topic that I'm interested in, and I will be joining you on the 4th of June. So I do have a few of our attendees who will be doing the same. What I might do now is just launch the feedback poll here before you guys jump off. Mel, if you do have a few minutes to stick around, we have a couple of other questions that are coming through.
I do.
We've got one, best legal software that you recommend to use currently.
What legal software?
Best legal software.
It would depend. I can't make a recommendation without actually knowing knowing a whole lot more about the context of that. So probably not something I can answer.
That's okay. Yeah, if for the person who submitted the question, best probably to reach out to Mel directly and maybe provide a little bit more context to have that conversation.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Please do.
How can we create a collaborative environment that includes non-legal staff in our projects? Yeah. Is that an issue?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it is an issue. It has been an issue. It's something that was a lot. I have been frustrated by for many years, and I think that's because I have been both a lawyer and worked in business development and worked in innovation. And for me, my frustration came from the fact that there was so many opportunities lost when you didn't actually value or have people involved that had the necessary skills to create great outcomes. And so I think design thinking creates a great environment for you to create a non-hierarchical and multidisciplinary team environment, because what you're doing by focusing on the user is actually making sure that, or you're actually providing the opportunity for people with those different skills to come in to help create the solution. And often the problem might not be legally or will not be legally based. It takes other skills to do that, and attributing the value to those skills is paramount to getting a great result for the user. So I think the best way, or the way that I've seen to do it, is that when you if you're putting together, say, design sprints or a committee or a team or project team to do this, then start really broad and make sure that everyone feels like they should be at the table because they have value to provide to that project and have equal value to provide to that project. And avoid that idea of it being only the senior people who are going to be able to contribute to that conversation. Look, I have so many tips and tricks for how you make that happen, and often it's around the creative ways that you come up with those ideas and how you brainstorm and how you have it so that everyone's contribution is listened to, rather than just maybe the more senior person in the room or the person who's legally trained within the room.
Do you think that before implementing legal design thinking as a process, as a practice into a law firm, is there a cultural piece there that culture needs to change? Yeah,
culture needs to change. I think, from what I was talking about just then, it is bringing it is bringing a non-hierarchical mindset to the table. And valuing those other sides of things, but it also is a cultural change from all of those mindsets that I talked about. The experimental piece of it is very different in terms of how people often approach things in a legal firm, because often, you use a precedent for it, or everyone else is doing this, so we should do this. And so it really does take a change in the way that you're thinking to start with the user, or even start from scratch. And so, yes, there needs to be a culture of innovation, permission, I think safety in a way too, for people to be able to come up with their ideas that are different and to be heard. And yes, it's interesting because if you go back to the slide that I had before around leaders who embrace change, and you look at those sorts of things, that's what you need to have as the cultural base for your firm to really get the most out of design thinking.
Well, thank you so much. I think we'll wrap up there. Thank you for your time. Loads of interest in what technologies Hive Legal are using for their practice management, others. So I hope that you'll have a few people connect with you on LinkedIn after this and ask those questions. But thank you to you for your time, and thank you to everyone that attended the session.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Irina.
On the 4th of June.
Yes, see you then.